I am going to give you some proof that atheists are religious. But first, I'm going to try to deal with some of the backlash here. Atheists are going to be so upset that they were called religious. I mean, you run into this all the time. When you call the religiosity out in an atheist, they're like, we're not atheists. Like, we're not religious. Us atheists, we are not religious. Like, what are you talking about? That's the whole point, is we're anti-religious with a religious fervor. So a lot of these guys hate God and religion and Christianity so much that they can't even fathom being associated with religion. And some have even said, like, we're not atheists. Like, don't call us atheists. We're just people that don't have a religion. And so the rest of us that use the term atheist to describe that are kind of outsourced. Like, we don't know what else to do because we have to talk about these topics. But with all of this, some will even say, hey, we're not organized in any way. We're not organized like a church. Like, why would you think that we are a religion of any sort? But then you start looking around and you find the American Atheist and the Atheist Alliance International and the Ian Rand Institute and Freedom from Religion Foundation and the Internet Infidels, Recovering from Religion, etc. So, sure, the atheist religion is not set up like other religions. It starts a little more sparse. It starts a little less structured, but it builds up with time. And the reason that is because you can't survive alone as an atheist. But the atheist likes to start that way. So let's say the young atheist or maybe the naive atheist is like, I'm just an atheist. I'm just getting away from religion. I'm just walking away from God concepts, etc. And so they think they're just free thinking, freestanding, etc. But eventually, certain things begin to fail. So the atheism, first of all, it becomes a religion of mankind or religion of the self, the putting of the self first, being the most devoted with self, the most in love with self, etc. But eventually that begins to break down for a few things because, the purpose of worship or worshiping something was to have something there that was worth worshiping, and the self doesn't quite fit the bill. Eventually we become disenchanted with ourselves. We become less enamored with how awesome we are and begin to see that we're failing. And so that part of atheism kind of begins to erode. So how do you hang on to your atheism? Not to mention, there are nagging questions in the back of our minds that begin to plague us. And we're like, well, how can I retain my atheism when this question is so prominent? And then on top of that, religious people, especially Christians, have this annoying habit of asking deep, penetrating questions. And so, like, to hang on to my atheism, I got to go find an atheist priest. And so there's this networking that begins so that a person can retain and hold on to and cling to their atheism. Now, is that 100% the case all the time? No, it wouldn't be fair to say so. There's some people that live just haphazardly that aren't really involved in this. But those that are, mentally trying to be atheists, like real solid atheists, and hold on to that as a position, you got to have some high priest, man, because there's too much against you. There's too many deep thoughts and too many mysterious things that work against you retaining your atheism to hold on to it without some guidance. And so this support system is held up by atheistic scientists and atheistic philosophers and maybe some smart people in some other categories that seem to be getting along very well without any sort of religion. And so these priests become the high priest of the atheist circles. They're the ones that provide the answers. So one that really has taken the spot and the spotlight in the last few years is Christopher Hitchens. And he is like worshipped by the atheists. Now they go, we don't worship men. Like, I worship myself. I don't worship men, but man, they sure respect him as highly as possible. And if you think about Christians and how they don't really lift up God as high as they should, but they, lift him up okay, you can make the same comparison that maybe the atheists don't lift up Christopher Hitchens to godlike status, but, well, they lift him up pretty good. So anyway, lately he has been added to the Logic Hall of Fame. And whose idea this was, I don't know. It is ridiculous. But I was doing some studying the other night and ran across Hitchens' razor. Hitchens' razor? I mean, whew. And I even had someone quote that to me, and it was like, asserted without evidence. Some concept or whatnot. Asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So the point is, like, if somebody brings up something mysterious or religious, if you assert that it's true without evidence, then I can dismiss it just as clearly without evidence. It is a whitewashing here. Hitchens has, said this really creative circular logic kind of scenario. So, gotcha. But like, that all sounds great, and it's nice to lift up this Hitchens as a high priest and give him, saint status, maybe now that he's passed. But the problem with that is, like, really think about that statement. Asserted without evidence? Dismissed without evidence? You mean like that statement? You see, Hitchens is asserting the statement as factual without providing any kind of fact behind it, so we can just as easily dismiss Hitchens' statement. And so basically we have spent a lot of time not saying anything. But such is the case with a lot of atheistic type thinking. But anyhow, they have to have some sort of high priest. They've got to have people that help them retain this. And so another person that fits in that category is Neil deGrasse Tyson. And here is where the proof that they are religious begins to pop into place. Now, they're going to deny this all day long. They're just going to deny it all day long. And so you're going to have to read between the lines. It's like if somebody is lying to you and they're lying, you could call them out on it, but they might never admit to it. It reminds me of a court system where there's plenty of witnesses and everybody saw the criminal did it, and judgment is being passed upon the criminal, and like, do you have anything to say? He's like, I'm innocent and I didn't do anything. Wasn't me. So they can say that they're not religious, but the fact is they've just never really paid attention to what they're religious to, or where their devotion, where their love, where their passion, where their focus is. But Neil deGrasse Tyson lets down his guard and reveals where all of his worship is in the statement of, he was being asked about, what do you think about all these satellites and asteroids, all these satellites that are in our atmosphere, and all these satellites that are, like you can fly across the sky, and if you're like looking up and you're really paying attention that you can see these satellites. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, as he usually does, just kind of interrupts and is like, oh yeah, constellations, man, constellations of satellites. And they stole that term for us. He's got to always throw this in there, like how much he knows. They stole these terms, constellation of satellites, from us, and constellations actually belongs to the priest category. You low-level people don't, you need to worship us and not the other way around. But anyway, these constellations of satellites, they're ugly. They're ugly. And why are they ugly, Neil? Like, what made them ugly? And he said this. He said, basically because they're cluttering the night sky. And he said this. He said, they're ugly. And I'm summarizing, but there are people that want to bask in the majesty of the night sky. Now that part's actual. He said this, to bask in the majesty of the night sky. He worked on that quote for a while. He has polished that quote, and he likes to be able to talk about it because he is enamored with, he is in love with, he worships the concepts of how far away stars are and how powerful they are and how mysterious black holes are. And will the theory of relativity ever be warped in such a way that we can time travel or travel across space and time? All of that is just, oh, it's so amazing to kneel and as he can step outside and worship the heavens. I want to bask in the majesty of the night sky. And I don't want these stupid satellites, interfering with that. There's utter devotion there. Atheists are religious. They're just religious on different things. It is a misplaced focus. And what atheists are going to find is not only will being a self-perpetuated atheist system fail, but eventually the whole construct will fail if you lean too heavily upon it. Accept it for what it is. Mankind is religious. He wants to worship something. But you desperately need to worship the right thing, which is the God of the Bible, Jesus Christ.